Hello folks, here I am with another video. This video is about 5 things that surprised me about Americans. Number 1, this is a relatively new country, so I thought that the people here probably have retained some of their original kind of roots and are more closely connected to where they came from. And even I thought some people might even have self-identify even as people from with people where they came from. Actually, for the majority of Americans, that's not the case. What I mean by this is people have a national American identity. It's truly a nationality, regardless of where people came from. In general, people have a strong American identity and identify as Americans. They don't identify as, even if they're 100%, let's say Irish or Italian or whatever the case might be. They don't identify as that, or if they do it only culturally. Usually those people have no idea what's going on in those countries. They simply have some cultural traits, but overall they're American. The second thing that's kind of a little bit related to that surprised me was that the Americans are really intermixed. It's really truly a melting pot. I'm not familiar with all Americans, but especially I was curious. For example, when I talked to white Americans, I was kind of curious to know, hey, where did you come from? Your family came from, your ancestors, because I'm really interested in demographics and language and ethnicity and things like that. And a lot of them quoted me up to 10 different nationalities, and surprisingly, I don't even know how, but they knew all of them. So for example, somebody might say, oh, I'm German, English, Irish, Polish, Greek, Russian, whatever the case might be. They quoted up to 10, and my point is, it's not only one, it's not only 2 or 3. People are really, really intermixed here, as far as, certain people, the whites especially, but I'm sure others too, but I'm just giving you an example with whites. People are really, really intermixed. I didn't expect it to be to such an extent, but they are. Another thing that surprised me was how practical Americans are, especially in terms of the specifically related to international things. For example, some people might not have been abroad, or might not have connections to people in another country, or don't have any kind of international aspect to their life or their business or whatever it might be, but in general they're very practical in either doing business internationally or having some kind of a connection. For example, when I first came to the US, I worked in McDonald's. I came through a foreign exchange kind of worker program for students to come to work during the summer. And the owners of the restaurant, I think they were from French and Italian descent, but they themselves, they were very nice people, but I don't think they had much international exposure. Certainly the kids were very kind of American. They were really cool, by the way, but I don't think they either went abroad or spoke a foreign language or anything. But at the same time, they brought in all these foreign students to come work at their restaurant, through this program. So I feel the government here, or the states specifically, or maybe some organizations or institutions, promote certain aspects of life here or business here that makes it easier for businesses or families or whatever the entity might be to foster international relations or contacts or business or whatever the case might be, or events. The fourth aspect that kind of surprised me about Americans was how diplomatic they are. I come from Bulgaria, and usually when I say to somebody that I'm from Bulgaria, to an American, they typically, in general, don't know much about Bulgaria. So how an American will typically react is they keep silent. They don't even ask you any questions about where you come from. They're not curious about it. They, are not interested, and for them this is just another topic. Like, for example, let's say baseball. If I'm not interested in baseball, probably I'm not going to discuss it. I'm not going to ask any questions about it. Maybe I don't even know much about it. So for Americans, it's the same thing. For if you come from a country that they're not familiar with or they don't know anything about, they're going to just completely ignore it. They're not going to inquire about it in any way. This is the exact opposite, I feel, of Europeans, or I think other people outside of the United States. Even if you come from a country that you're not familiar with, you would be still kind of curious. People have a natural curiosity to ask questions, and for one reason or another, I find that people in this country are not like that. What else? Another aspect of final fifth thing about Americans I kind of find surprising is, I mentioned in another video, typically people are very local, very regional. At the same time though, people do move a lot, quite a bit here. Probably not so many people travel and explore the country, but at the same time, if people have an opportunity to work somewhere, they move very easily. People migrate a lot. People move for work typically quite a bit. So there's a big movement of people all across the country. There are people coming to the West Coast, people going to the East Coast, or people migrating maybe for retirement down in Florida, or having all these different types of events, and people go to these events across the country. So in that respect, the US is a very dynamic country. People are not afraid to move, to a very far place, from the East Coast to the West Coast is, I think, about 4,500 kilometers. It's not close. From Sofia to London is about 2,000 kilometers, so it's twice and even more than that distance. So it's a very, very long way for you to move across the entire continent, really, because this is truly a continent. So that's the last aspect of American kind of aspect of the American kind of psyche or environment that I was surprised about. If you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise I'll see you in the next video. Bye.